Hello everyone, today in this video we will fight against the Atmas character of our world around us, and we will comment about recent events, or I would say informations about the recent event that happened, what really happened. We will try to find out in Russia and eastern Ukraine in recent days. A few days ago we got, of course, a lot of noise in media about so-called mutiny of the leader of the Wagner group, Mr. Prigozhin. And the funny thing is that some media even commented, yeah, Mr. Prigozhin is now marching on Moscow. Moscow is preparing for the defense. Yeah, it's over for the current Russian regime. Soon there will be a power change. Blah 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 blah. Of course, within about 30 few hours, everything was over. Most likely, but I don't know if it was the current sequence of events. Mr. Lukashenko, president of Belarus, mediated. And what was it? In my opinion, it was not a mutiny, it was like a tomfoolery from the side of Mr. Prigozhin, just to shake the Kremlin officials, I mean mainly military officials, who were not so competent in the uh, commanding Russian units, including Wagner Group, that it's something between French Foreign Legion and a mercenary unit. They were not so competent in commanding during the last intensified stage of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, that intensified, as we remember, recently on the 24th of February 2022, because this conflict started in 2014. So Mr. Prigozhin seemingly was not so happy from the way how these guys were commanding and from the orders they were receiving, because there is not so much progress. Seemingly the situation on the front line, if we can call it as a front line, because this is strange war, it was not even declared, and it's something like a series of clashes. So we see that we have a stalemate situation. So I guess there was a sort of frustration on the both sides, either Ukrainian or Russian, and this tomfoolery of Mr. Prigozhin, in Western media called mutiny, was actually a sort of manifestation of the frustration. And we also heard that since July, the contracts guys from the Wagner group are having were about to be changed, and now they were about to be employed by the Ministry of Defense, what automatically suggests that their salaries would be lower. So we see that money issue is also in the background, but it's not only. In my opinion, it's mainly the level of frustration that accumulated among these people, because there is not much progress in recent months in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and there are only sporadic clashes and stalemate situation, but people are still being lost and equipment is still being lost. So the situation is not beneficial for anybody on a longer run. And in my opinion, it was a manifestation of the frustration. Of course, money is still in the background, I think, and I also see from the other side that the Ukrainians didn't use this opportunity, these 30 few hours of Russian troubles. But we hear in the Western media, especially about the counter-offensive of Ukrainian forces, that it's about to be started. But this counter-offensive, so-called, is about to be started for the last 4 or 5 months. But it cannot happen. My explanation is simple. We see that many Ukrainians fled the country, not only women and children, but also guys who are fit and could serve in the army. So the army is missing manpower. Many of them already died or got wounded. They got wounded to such an extent that they cannot go back to the front lines. So we see that seemingly Ukraine is missing one of the main resource for waging the war, which is actually manpower. And in my opinion, they cannot rebuild it. Even the huge numbers of mercenaries from all around the world who are supporting Ukrainian forces, they are also exhausted, they also suffered losses. So seemingly they have just enough people and equipment to keep their positions. That's why we have stalemate situation, but they do not have enough people, especially, to launch counter-offensive against Russian forces in Donbass. So we have to be honest and say that seemingly this counter-offensive that was announced so many times cannot be launched because there is not enough manpower from the Ukrainian side to launch it, which is obvious for people who think independently and use their brain properly because of the human losses, massive emigration in a very short time since this intensification of Russo-Ukrainian conflict happened in February 2022, and because of the losses that were inflicted by Russian forces to the Ukrainian armed forces. So they do not have enough forces to launch this counter-offensive. That's why it cannot happen. So this counter-offensive is more, I would say, creation of media and internet than the reality and propaganda. Because one would say, if something like this happens, like this tomfoolery, I wouldn't call it mutiny, I would call it tomfoolery from this what we know. I'm all the time commenting on the basis of the informations we have that surely to some extent are still distorted because during conflicts misinformation goes from both sides. But the one thing is very certain, that if the opponent doesn't use such rarely happened situation that was almost actually as a gift from heavens for the Ukrainian side, and they didn't use it, they didn't make any serious move during this 30 few hours when this Prigozhin's tomfoolery was taking place. It means that they do not have enough resources, I mean especially manpower, to do so. So we see that now Kremlin, to save the face, will have to, after pacifying this tomfoolery of Mr. Prigozhin and his people who participated in it, they would have to save the face that is already damaged, I mean their reputation among Russian population, but to save themselves, they would have to introduce some changes in the higher command and launch another more aggressive offensive against Ukrainian forces. There is no other way, I think, and in my opinion it will happen really quickly because big boys on Kremlin want to save their butts. This is how I see it. All the best, have a nice day, bye.